there and welcome back to another Demon Slayer video, and today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 2, Water Hashira Giyu Tomioka's Pain. Man, they really love them some lengthy titles, huh? And this episode seems primed to follow up on the very obvious hanging plot thread established in the last chapter, that Tomioka didn't seem at all interested in participating in the Hashira Training with the others, seemingly leaving that meeting on bad terms. And then there's also the cliffhanger ending where the crow appears to forge an alliance with Lady Kameo. And so, yeah, let's get going, shall we? Okay, so we start off the episode just recapping the ending of the previous one, where the crow makes the offer on an alliance with Lady Kameo. He asks her to come to the mansion in order to work with the bug Hashira to create a weapon to aid in the death of Muzan. And whilst this is a repeat scene, which are never really all that fun for me, it was fun to see some cutaways to Yushiro to see him panicking and trying to get to Kameo in time, thinking that she was in extreme danger despite being a demon. Oh, what a simp. But we do find out that she's decided to accept the offer and work with the Slayers, but then again, that kind of felt obvious to me. Like, what was she going to do? Say no? That would be a massive anticlimax to that sequence. Although I did find it interesting to see that flashback of Kameo thinking about her and, I think, Muzan, finding themselves confronted by the first breathing warrior guy, the one from Tanjiro's dream, the guy the robot warrior seems to be based on. I'm curious to see more of that at some point, probably late this season, honestly. When she turns up at the mansion, perhaps. Looks like a showdown of some sort, so I'm very eager to see how that goes. We then get the intro theme, and then it's on to the bulk of the episode. We start off following up with that letter from the Master to Tanjiro, where he confides that he's very sick and unable to move, and whilst he wishes he could be the one to go and speak to Tomioka, he can't anymore. And yeah, true. In the flashbacks we've seen, where he has those heart-to-heart moments with the Hashira, he seems to really understand what makes them tick more than anybody else. And I'd say that's probably why they're all so devoted to serving him. Hell, he hardly has met Tanjiro, and yet he already knows that the guy's annoyingly persistent and has a heart of gold, and so he's the perfect person to enlist to bring Tomioka back into the fold, simply by force of will. And so after some unhelpful advice from the housekeeper girl who takes care of them at the Butterfly Mansion, where she says that if it was her, she'd want him to leave her be, she gives him some rice balls for two. So, a mixed bag, bad advice, but a kind gesture. And here we get into a rather hilarious 4-minute chunk of the episode, where Tanjiro arrives at the Water Mansion, I guess they all just live near each other, and stands outside the gate crying out for Tomioka, before just letting himself in, asking him to come and train, and also sitting way too close. Tomioka gets understandably angry at this trespasser, and tells him that he should have been the one to master water breathing so he could go and be the new Water Hashira, and Giyu is the Hashira no longer. Or so he says. I think it's pretty convenient of him to say things like that, like, oh, I'm no longer worthy to be the Hashira, but then he also stays in the mansion, and I presume he was provided that mansion as part of the whole deal. Just saying. He then tells Tanjiro to get lost, and Tanjiro remembers what the master told him, and decides to up the ante and become as persistent and annoying as he can to ensure that he wears him down and convinces him to come along. And he does this by first leaving him rice balls, which he does eat, before following him around relentlessly, pretty much trolling him into submission. He follows him on what he thinks is patrol. He stands outside his bedroom whilst he's sleeping, calling out his name and how they should go and train. He does this when they're eating. He does this when they're meditating. Hell, he even watches him bathe whilst continuing to pester him. He even waits outside the toilet. And I gotta say props to the voice actor for Tanjiro here, the happy droning that he unleashes again and again and again, and it just gets funnier and funnier the longer it goes. And it combines with the goofy drawings they've done for his face perfectly. It's so absurd in the best way. Few shows are so easily able to go from the ultra serious to this level of ridiculous comedy so seamlessly. This is just peak. And it gets to the point that Giyu is contemplating whether Tanjiro might just keep this up for the rest of their lives, which honestly, based on his personality, does seem like a legitimate possibility. And so it gets to the point that Tanjiro is so persistent and so annoying that Giyu has no real choice but to open up to him. He tells him that he never passed the final exam on the mountain, that as a young boy, his older sister had been killed by demons, which eventually led to him being taken in by the water trainer alongside Sabito, the spirit boy that helped train Tanjiro to kill that super demon in the exam. Damn, that is a blast from the past. Haven't thought about that dude in ages, probably since that arc, so literally years in real life. And then we jump fully into the flashback, and we get to see little Giyu and how different he was, so full of joy and emotion, happy with his life and finding a new purpose, a new family. Until the day of the final exam, where Sabito was whooping demon ass, killing every single demon on that mountain except for one, ensuring everybody else in the training survived. But of course at the cost of his own life, and all the while, Giyu was badly wounded by the first demon he fought, and then he passed out, and so he only passed the test by being carried around for 7 days. But he has that survivor's guilt for living on when Sabito died, as Sabito was the far more powerful swordsman of the two of them. And in his eyes, therefore it should have been Sabito who lived. Sabito who became the water Hashira, and Giyu should have just died on the mountain. And so whilst he felt like he had to take up the mantle of Hashira when he was appointed, he doesn't feel like he belongs with them. He's not their equal, and thus Tanjiro would be better off leaving him behind and training with the others. Because in his eyes, he's never going to be skilled enough to manifest the Demon Slayer marking, which feels like an obvious hint that he will indeed manifest the marking by the time all is said and done. And Tanjiro, luckily, is able to relate to how he's feeling, because that's how he felt after Rengoku died during the course of the train battle. Oh, Rengoku, I still miss you. And then Tanjiro too reflects on Sabito and how when Tanjiro was in his position, he couldn't save anybody. He could barely make it through the trial himself, and so if Sabito was alive, based on how many demons he was able to kill, and the fact that it was he that taught Tanjiro how to kill the hand demon, he'd probably be amongst the most powerful of the Hashira. Damn, I kind of like this, because it goes to show that one unlucky fight can unravel your career. That whilst all of these guys might have been prodigies when they were new, they were still at a much lower level than they are now. And right now they're nigh unbeatable, but even then they can still die. And thus, they're more vulnerable. Never really thought about it like that. I mean, look at how much Tanjiro's grown in power, but in the trial, he was relatively weak and struggled. Same with like Tokido. He almost died in the battle with the pot dude. If the little kid with the mask hadn't been there to get attacked and make him angry enough to break free and manifest his mark, it would have been game over. He just would have died. And I guess, I don't know, it gives me a bit of grounding and this melancholy feeling is all. That Sabito is the representation of what could have happened to any of these powerful characters if they'd simply been a bit unlucky. And so Tanjiro asks him, as Giyu keeps trying to leave, whether Giyu really isn't going to pass on everything that he learned and was entrusted to by Sabito, whether that legacy is going to end with him. And this reminds him of when Sabito said something similar about Giyu not honouring the sacrifice of his older sister because he was moping and wishing he'd died instead, but instead he should have been living his life for her and passing on her legacy through his actions. Damn. Tell you what, Sabito was just a Chad, wasn't he? Life lessons, saved everybody on the mountain, ensured Tanjiro wouldn't be killed by the hand demon even though he was already dead. He's just such a beast. Rest in peace. And he also gave Giyu a good old-fashioned slap to get his point across. What a mad lad. And this next part was rather funny, as Giyu's having this big emotional epiphany, which whilst they usually do take a long time in anime land, usually none of the other characters actually notice this elapsed time, because it seemingly stops for them. But here it goes in sort of the opposite direction. Tanjiro actually notices he's been quiet and still for a little while, and thinks he's fumbled his attempt at bringing him round to train, and so he panics and starts to think about how he could challenge him to a speed eating contest, because that for sure is going to bring him out of his funk. Oh, Tanjiro, you're so pure. And so as Giyu is attempting to accept his offer to join the training, he's instead challenged to a food eating contest. And he just goes along with it too, which I found doubly funny. He then asks about Shinobu and whether she's going to be joining the training too, as she hadn't been mentioned. And this shifts us over to her, and she seems pretty salty, probably because she has to work alongside a demon, in all honesty. And since she's a Hashira, and the Hashira simply hate demons from what we've seen, she probably isn't that happy about it. And in her defense, as a Hashira, she's probably had to withstand the worst of all demon kind. And we've seen that these upper rank demons and whatnot, they are truly disgusting monsters. And so it would be hard to trust any demon. And there's got to be some PTSD in there somewhere too, plus her sister was killed by a demon. So it's not like Nezuko, where she's a sweet little bean. Tamayo's an unknown. And hell, she even did try to kill Nezuko once upon a time, so yeah. And then her little sister arrives, she asks her why she's not at the Hashira training, and affirms her desire to train together, which was very sweet. Although why do I get a terrible, terrible feeling about one of these siblings dying in the end? At least one of these sibling bonds has to break, and it's definitely going to be this one, I think. Especially when she's entrusting the identity and method of killing the demon that took out their older sister to her. Yeah, death flags for Shinobu. Massive death flags. And then we get the ending sequence, which is very cool, no complaints there, and the preview for next time, which involves Tanjiro finally joining the Hashira training. And so, yeah, that's the end of the episode. I would like to say that these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? You like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.